Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of On Point Fighting. Tonight, I have a special guest, and when you have a special guest, you have to do something really special. So my guest is one of the most important voices in the country today, expert in the world of martial arts. I'm not going to say which martial art yet. If you know him, you already know. If not, I'm going to let him explain that. But my guest is none other than Soke Haisan Kaleak. Soke, welcome to the show.
Sensei, how are you, bro? Everything well on your end?
Yes, I'm doing very well. Now, to set it up for the folks at home, I was introduced to Soke Haisan Kaleak in 1991. I knew of him before then, but actually formally introduced by my instructor, Sensei Bolo, in 1991. So that's over 30 years ago. So I'm estimating that during that time, we've probably had over 1,000 conversations. And whenever we talk, the conversations are very substantial to the point where when we hang up, I'm like, damn, I should have recorded that because he's always dropping gems on me and just, uplifting me mentally, right? So we don't have these, frivolous conversations like, yo, you saw thickness at the Starbucks last night? Yo, did you crack for the number? Yeah, we don't we don't have those. We're not on that frequency. And for the record, I've never had a cup of coffee in my entire life. So let that sink in. So basically, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to just have a private conversation and share it with the world because it's going to make a contribution. And that's what we do here. So, Soke, how was your weekend?
Pretty good, brother. Just trying to keep things moving. Got a couple of things as we approach the middle of this year. As we approach June, that's halfway through the year, and so we got kind of like doing an evaluation on what we want to do with the rest. But it's been good so far.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I had a busy weekend too. I went to Philadelphia on Saturday and interviewed one of the legendary Philadelphia kickers, Keith McKinley.
Yes, sir. Good,
And
good,
so
brother.
that was New York to Philly. I didn't want to drive like New York to Philly, back from Philly to New York, then wake up the next morning at 6 a.m. and drive, to New Jersey to train with Kevin Thompson Jr. So I stayed in a hotel in New Jersey, 20 minutes from the dojo. So then I had a 3-hour torture session with Kevin Thompson Jr. and Soke Andre.
It's
So
good to know you're making your rounds, man, because that's important to, just sometimes support people by going to their events or whatever. But as you said before, to sit and talk with these people, it really does kind of balance out your martial art.
yeah, it's a calling for me. It's a calling for me. I just feel like I'm on my purpose, when I'm doing that. And these are stories, and people that deserve to be highlighted and deserve to have their stories told. And, I see myself as someone, preserving the history and culture of our people, meaning warriors and martial artists, through
Most
telling their
definitely.
stories,
Yes,
through
sir.
telling their
Always been
stories.
doing it. No, you did it in written form as well as, like you said before, being a representative of Asatita as well. So, kudos to you, bro.
It was many years ago, when I was a student in college, and actually that's when I trained with Soke Littlejohn. I brought Stokely Carmichael to the campus. Now, as one of the conditions, I said he had to agree to a 2-hour interview. So even back then, it was on the job, right?
Right.
They were like, well, no, we're not doing a 2-hour interview. They said 45 minutes. So I agreed to 45 minutes. So it was myself, Stokely Carmichael, my buddy Darwin, and Stokely's security personnel, in the room, Malcolm X Lounge at Columbia University. And that's where we had the interview. And we actually ended up going for 1 hour and 15 because he said once he started, he wasn't going to stop till he had answered all of our questions. But during that time, that's when he put this label on me of griot. And at that time, I didn't know what the term griot meant. And so he explained it, every African village, back in the day had one. And I kind of grew into that over the years. I didn't think much of it then, but then kind of grew into it over the years.
Yes, sir.
So and it's been very gratifying, to see the type of impact, that I've had, very, very gratifying. I have people come up to me now 20 years later with exact quotes from the magazine.
Yeah, yeah. Powerful.
So anyway, Sanukis, how would you explain Sanukis
Well, Snookershoe Jiu-Jitsu is the art that my beloved teacher, Supreme Grandmaster Dr. Moses Powell, taught me. His name is iconic in the martial art world. Some people say in the jiu-jitsu world, but I always say in the martial art world because I've met so many people over the years that's not into jiu-jitsu that can tell me stories about my beloved teacher and how they interacted with him and how he changed their lives or their perception about even the art that they practiced that he didn't. But again, always searched for the common denominator. And he defined Sanukas as being the art of simplicity and survival, simplicity and survival. And the more I practiced it over the years, and I spent over 22 years under him, is that I see that it was really what he was saying, that it all breaks down to a common denominator. In numerology, you break things down to the common denominator. If the number is 6 and 16, then the number is really 7 because you put the 6 and the 1 together. And these have meanings when you get to the root of something. And the principle that he gave me was really the scientific way of looking at martial art. I mean, you can look at martial art in the way of the practitioner, the artist, and the scientist. The evolution of the way you understand that what you're in. So if you're in the martial art, you know, people look at it as martial artists, and they even say that about themselves. I'm a martial artist. Okay, that's fine. Then what are you beyond that? What's the next level? What are you reaching for? Oh, I'm a martial practitioner. That's great. But is that the final goal? So after you practice it, then what? And if you look at anything in your martial art career as a then what, you start to understand the different levels of understanding you can come to, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, simplicity and survival, Sanuka Shuru Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay. So many years ago, we had a conversation, and I shared with you that I attended Professor Florenzo Visitation's 76th birthday celebration,
Yes,
which
sir.
was held in Hempstead or Freeport, Long Island, someplace out there, Nassau County. And that day, he said that Moses Powell discovered a new way of moving. Okay. And for me, this new way of moving that he discovered, that was revealed somehow to him, he named that way of moving Sanukis. So it was something that really put me, when he said that, it was so deep and so profound and set me on this stream of consciousness, because in a different way, he was also saying how Moses Powell had taken what he had given him, what he had learned, and then elevated and took it to a whole new hemisphere. In many ways, he transcended Vijitsu. So Sanukis is actually an evolutionary quantum leap in Vijitsu. Um, Now, he said, wait, let me say this first and get this, bounce this off you. The way that he moves, which is very different from the way that Professor V moves,
Hmm.
I believe it came from the influence of our culture, meaning the African American culture on him. And he was expressing that because we have a very distinctive, creative way of expressing ourselves in dance, in fighting. It's stick and move with us, with boxers. Well, at least that's, the stereotypical African American style. Whereas the stereotypical Mexican style is to stand toe to toe and to prove that I can take your punch, but you can't take mine. So,
Sir.
we're not like that. And when I look at American Karate Do, the system founded by Kevin Thompson, I see the same type of flow, the same type of energy, and the same type of him reflecting the culture back through the martial arts and through his moves and stuff. So what do you think about that?
I think that you hit it right on the point, but it all goes back to, again, find the common denominator. If we think about what you said, he just basically translate that comment into Supreme Grandmaster Dr. Moses Powell found another frequency. So
Hmm.
think about it like that. It's like waves and stuff like that. You know, there was a time that we weren't even aware of microwaves. That ain't new. It's just we wasn't aware of microwaves and how to control it and do whatever. And then we sort of harnessed it and we learned to not burn up our food with it, but we can get it just warming up. Well, on another wave frequency, there's a laser beam which will cut through anything. There's nothing mild about a laser beam. But nevertheless, they found a frequency where they can make a laser light point without burning something. So again, it's the same thing, bending light and bending the frequencies. You know, there's a lot of talk about time travel and bending light. And bending that so you bend time. So again, if you start to think about it, you think about how you're always trying to reach another plateau with something, and sometimes not intentionally. Because you said before, if I'm born into a certain culture, I'm going to bring that with me. If I'm born into the hard, rigid style of Japanese karate, I'm gonna bring that with me because I was raised in that culture. So to adapt to that, people do that all the time, but to come with your own and to elevate that which you were given to the next level, yeah, I would compliment that skill as well. You know, there was a quote some time ago about Albert Einstein. Um, he had made his transition. He lived his life, and up until the point where he made his transition in life, he tried to prove his own theory of relativity wrong. You know, E equals MC square. You know, he found that, but he didn't accept it as being the truth. He went in to try to dispel his own theory. I've always admired that because we get so much into our human state of I'm the it. My thought is the last thought until we take that into almost everything that we do. And so if we bring it back to martial art, the evolution of martial art has to happen within first. I can't think that my black belt is the end. Now, most black belts know that now, but people under black belt don't think that. A lot of them think that it's the end. I said, I've achieved. But later on, you get this epiphany and you understand I've just begun at black belt. Begun to go where? Because there's another stage beyond that. And so when you go to the height of your physical prowess, remember that the mission was always spirit, mind, body. That was always the mission. But in your youth, you have a tendency to think about just the body. You do know that there's some mind involved in that because there's some study. So that's what time and grade is about. White belt, yellow belt, green belt, I got to spend time in grade. That's my mind working on it. My spirit is, as you see with Asatita, I've always complimented him on the ability to be able to transcend spirit. All of his people look like that. All of his people bring that spirit when you can say, oh, well, they just screaming, they just doing that, but they're bringing that spirit that he taught them. And that's a very hard thing to do is teach somebody spirit. I know
Yeah,
that for
yeah,
myself.
they
It's
make you
just,
feel something when you watch them. But I wonder if that experience as a spectator, as an observer, I wonder if that's the same experience for someone that's outside the culture. Do they feel something or not?
yeah,
It's interesting.
I think they do. The people who are really in search of and is seeking that will feel that because he's delivering that. And he's not delivering it just for you because it's a show. That's him. If you ever knew, for the people who never met Asatita Kevin Thompson, you would know that's him all of the time. He'd always bring not that spirit, but the spirit. I've never seen him greet me ever without a smile even when he was in dire straits. It's the spirit that he brought. He brought it to the room. You want to bring something with you all the time that stays in the room after you left physically. And I tend to think that martial law offers us that opportunity, but we don't nurture that enough.
Absolutely. I want to go back to what you said about frequency because that's very important. And I don't think that's something that decades ago we could have actually discussed publicly, but I think the public is ready to hear this type of stuff now. So I trained with Soke Little John Davis from 1972 to 1982, my last 3 years in college. So now I'm kind of like easing back into this world, and I don't have the same flow that I had back then, and it's because I'm not on the same frequency. So one of the things in my mind constantly these days is this idea of regaining the flow, and I want to you to talk about some of the components that can help me regain the flow. And I want to share one element that I think was part of it, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. I think one of the elements, well, let me stop before I talk about that, the elements. I remember I told you that one of my favorite parts of class was the circle of death. Could you explain that to everybody?
Yeah, the circle of death they call hellfire. There's a whole bunch of names that like that would be that they would put you in the middle of the dojo and maybe 8 to 10 people would surround you and you had to not so much fight your way out, but they would attack you. It was done different ways, and some schools still do it. So, I say if it was 8 people around you, everybody would have a number. And since they would call out a number, and that number you wouldn't really realize if it was behind you, to the side of you, or whatever, because you're moving around. And then you had to assess that number when he came at you and did some type of self-defense, and be aware and not get hit or whatever. Make sure you may block. And then sometimes they would do it, and if they wouldn't give them numbers, they would just randomly come at you, more Aikido style for Ramdori. Ramdori is the height of flow if you're an Aikido cop. You're working on that flow almost from the time you walk in the door, of how to redirect someone's energy. And so you have to have a certain flow about you to create that flow that you want to extend to that opponent. Often a Kidoka will put his hand up against your hand, feel your energy and redirect it. That's the flow, connecting. So I'm making you connect to my flow when I touch you. I'm not trying to go against the flow. Um, it's funny because there's a quote that's kind of famous, some of the old Bruce Lee interview, when he says, flow like water, my friend.
Mhm.
He's saying when a water hits a rock, it doesn't crash against, I know you're familiar with that interview. But what he's really saying there is that you must create a flow. All right. And my teacher, my beloved teacher, said you can't take a man and teach him to be hard and rigid. Well, he must flow like a stream. So again, common denominators. You hear these masters from two different genres speak about this flow. Um, when you watch certain fight sequences or whatever, the choreographing is a flow. Oh, that's not real. Nobody will do this, that, and the other. But you have to have a certain kind of choreographing about yourself to create the flow. So I say that it's something that should be nurtured, and whatever method that you use it at. I have a great admiration for dancers, because dances, just look at any dance routine, even though it's choreographed, to get 15, 20 people to do all of those movements, clap, claps, bump, bump, all that in the flow of stuff, and then stop and do a whole nother sequence with another 24 movements in it, and then come back next week and remember the first one. Say what you want about kata. Kata is hard enough to remember, but I think a dancer is creating a whole another level of flow that perhaps they don't even know they have. But it's strange because I've had dancers, female dancers in my school that can't remember kata, a 48 move kata, or, some 30 moves in the lower ranks, and they can't remember that. And I'm like, you just remember that whole routine, but you can't remember the kata? See, so it's this thing of how do I connect what I know to the padding of what that is? Think of it like putting something in a vessel when you're stirring it around, right? When you throw it in, it starts to move with the current that you created. It doesn't just go right to the bottom. If you started turning the water already and then throw something in, you see it jump right on the current and keep moving with it. So you have to think about your knowledge being that way. I already know the thing, but how can I get it to move with me? And
Okay.
mm,
The you explained what the circle of death is, but what is the benefit to the person in the center as it relates to flow? And then I'm
I
going to
think
tell you
it's
the two elements I thought,
me myself. I just tend to think it's teaching you to live in the moment and to be very, very responsive to what may happen. And so you don't have time to think about what you're going to do. You just act on it. So that's second nature kind of thing.
it's
The
not a cerebral
Japanese,
exercise at all.
no, at all. The Japanese have a term that they use. Uh, it's called satori. Satori is the art of living in the moment. In the moment, not behind me before right there, right down, doing just that. So the circle of death kind of represents that to me. I don't have time to think about how big this guy is, who's coming first, who motioned towards me but didn't really make a threat. That's a whole lot of evaluation that has to happen at the same time. I just posted recently a video of me doing a technique up online and social media. And I was going through the steps of how you go about trapping somebody or whatever. And somebody wrote, that's a whole bunch to think about in the moment. And I laughed because I'm not thinking about it. I'm moving with the mover, as my teacher would say. So it's no thought process then. It reminds me of remember the old sitcom, I think it was called Family Affair, the character Urkel.
Oh,
Remember, yeah, remember his line, did I do that?
right.
You want to be like that. You want to be like it happened, and then you go back and look at yourself in the third party, like, did I do that? And that to me says now you're flowing because it's just happening. Not that you're trying to remember it.
Okay. I'm going to ask you how I can regain the flow, but I'm going to tell you one of the elements that I think was a component of it was trusting the instructor. And when I was with Lil John, we used to do that demos. He would take us around. We do demos here and there. Once we did a demo in front of 1,500 people. In fact, it was at Columbia when I bought Stokely. We went on first, and then Stokely came out, and there was like 1,500 people in the audience. And if you read Obama's first book, Dreams of My Father, Obama came to Columbia when I was a senior. He came in as a junior, and he makes reference to attending that event in his book. So I'm like, indirectly, I got a shout out from the president
Okay.
indirectly,
Okay.
because I arranged that whole thing. But one of the demos that we did was in Manhattan, the Upper East Side, like East 105th or East 108th, something like that. And we did it in the street. So I was doing rollouts in the street, no mats, nothing, like in the street. And I look back on that now and I'm like, yo, boy, that's kind of crazy, but we were able
Yeah.
to do it. But back then I didn't doubt, I didn't give it a second thought or whatever, because I trusted him and he said, do it. And I was like, okay, well, he said it. I'm sure we can do it. We did it. It was another day in class when it was only me and this lady named Chris showed up. And he had us doing all sorts of crazy stuff. We were jumping off the back of chairs and doing all this wild stuff, diving off the chairs,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. And again, it was another thing where, like, because I trusted him, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm with it, whatever, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that I think is one component of it without there. But what are others? What are some of the other components? Like, how can I regain the flow?
Well, just to make comment to what you just said thus far, is that all martial art is blind faith. When we walk into school, we don't really know. Even if we've been told about the person, we don't know. Back in the days that you're talking about, it sounds crazy to people nowadays, and like you say, all kinds of crazy stuff. Nobody thought of that being crazy back in the day. That we was training for reality. You're not going to have no mats in the street. And so,
Right.
well, can't we build up or the mats and then take the mats away and do the build up? No, it wasn't that. It was like my teacher, when he told me stories, he said, we train that when we walk out the door that night from training, we may have to use what we just did, not practicing it, but knowing that it works from here to there, but no buffer in between. And so, yeah, that was kind of thing that people like yourself and others seek. We seek schools like that because we wanted it to be real to us all the time. So we did what the teacher asked. And as I said before, I really believe that's a component in all martial arts, blind faith. Unfortunately, sometimes this people get led down the wrong way. The teacher is not a good teacher and will make you believe that what you're doing is real, and it's not. It will not serve you. And that's where it gets to be sort of controversial when people say, oh, you do that, it'll go and get you killed. That person doesn't really know. But yeah, all kinds of training like that was the order of the day. Why? Because we were taught you have to learn to take it before you can give it. That was the mode. That was the modus operandi at the time. Nobody learned something without it getting done to them first. Okay. Let me show you why you can't block. Okay, block, 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 and they hit you upside the head a couple of times, and then see, you thought you can block, but you can't. But if you understand that all blocks come from an X, whether it's up, all blocks come from an X, all blocks come from an X, all blocks come from an X. That premise still sticks in my mind from basic karate do. So crossing your hands to block, crossing your hands to block, I can change up the block from the X. To me, that was like, whoa. Now I understand I don't have to be afraid as opposed to trying to fish for something coming at me and miss it. I can now go from the X principle. And so there, you get these principles or aka concepts, and then you work from there. The analogy I always give people is that the alphabet is just a concept. The letters make words. And the words make sentences, and the sentences make paragraphs, the paragraphs make pages, chapters, and on and on. But you can't do that without having the concept of knowing the alphabet first. So basically what I was just trying to get at when you made your point there is that when you talked about the blind faith, the teacher has to be able to teach in different modalities. Because everybody, I'm quite sure when he was teaching you how to jump off high places, everybody couldn't do that. But the teacher has to find the right modality to get that student to do that task or what the concept is supposed to represent. And so, this in Kurokushin, I also took Kurokushin in my younger days. Their simple rule was that there is no punching to the face, but you can kick somebody in the face, big time. But so it was, a lot of punching to the body, but I was destroying that arm as well. And that's what we call in Sanukas limb destruction. If I beat these arms up enough, you're not going to be able to block or hit me or whatever. So I'm going to punch the thing or destroy the thing that's in front of you. Because Kurokushin understood that too. If I destroy these arms and I kick you in the head, then I can take your body away. So again, I look at it conceptually. And I think that any and all arts have that if you seek it. If you go into a boxing gym, there is no coach that won't teach you the concept of body head. Destroy the body and the head will come to you. To me, that's a concept. Whether you want to do it through a jab, a hook, or whatever, but every now and then, watch the professionals. They'll go for the body. And sometimes not even to get the strike, but to make you understand that I'm looking at your body so you can forget about your head. And that's when that hook comes in there and you're on the floor. So, when I watch control sports, I look for that. I look for what concepts are they teaching there and what are they sharing and who's going by the rules and who's breaking the rules. And usually the person that's breaking the rule is the person that gets dropped every single time, So, I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. But I'm interested in hearing what you thought was the other concepts of flow.
Well, you have to saturate yourself, I believe, with the techniques and the moves. So what I did today in class, I remembered a drill from a long time ago, cross grab, right? Person cross grabs. I come here, boom, and then take him that way. So first I'm taking him this way, right? And then I'm taking him like that. And then I would immediately grab him. So we never break physical contact with each other. So I can always feel his energy and just flowing back and forth like that. When you came to Arango Martial Arts Institute a few weeks back, and I attended, and you had us doing a flow drill also. Boom, control, block, control, strike, boom, block, control, strike, boom, 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 boom. And then you can start to feel that, even if you do it slow, you can start to feel, okay,
Yes,
it's coming
sir.
back. I'm feeling it. So doing it slow like that. So I'd like you to respond to that, but before I forget, also, I'm going to give you two things to respond to. So that thing, the concept of the flow and regaining it. When you called me up at the seminar at Arangos, you called me up and I bowed to you in the particular way that I've been taught by Soke Little John Davis, only to find out earlier this week, that is unique to the Sanukis family and the Sanukis lineage. So, and this is something that Doc, gave us. And and that unites us really. It unites us in a real special way. Years ago, when I was in high school, I trained in a Shaolin homemade pie. So we bow. It's called Pai Chu, right? So we Pai Chu like this. So fast forward years later, I'm doing a summer thing at this Wing Chun school, and we Pai Chu. So I Pai Chu, and this guy, Chinese guy, he says, Shaolin, you're Shaolin. It was so funny the way he said it. It's like that episode of Kung Fu, the first pilot episode where he lifts the thing and they see his branch and they say, "Oh, you're Shaolin." So I'm saying to the guy, like, "Yeah, how'd you know that I'm Shaolin?" He said, "Because of the way that you Pai Chu." He said, "We Pai Chu like this.
Yes,
Other
sir.
schools
Yes,
Pai
sir.
Chu like that.
Yes, sir.
Shaolin Pai Chu's like this." You
Right,
know
right.
what I mean? But
Yeah.
to
I'll go back
discover
to
so many
that.
years
Yeah.
later that this bow, is unique to us, I just thought that was awesome and great.
And again, noticing those things that mark our differences, but the common denominator is that it's respect. You see, so
Right.
to know the salutations of other groups, to be able to give them the salutation of the way of respect in their quote unquote language is an honor. And as you said, he immediately knew the difference because you kind of like don't mistake this for this. It's either this or whatever. So as it says in the Japanese will not give you the crown of their head when they bow. They will we were taught to always keep your eyes upward and then come back. When I learned from the Japanese, so never to give the crown of your head and then come back. So, these little different things has a lot to do with the teacher, and sometimes the teachers don't explain why these things are happening. And sometimes it's for the good of the student because it's not for him to determine whether or not it's AKA appropriate or not. It's part of it. Just like in kata, people say, well, I don't see the reason, I don't see the bunkai in that movement in impi and then doing this and jumping. I don't see it. It's not for you to see. It's for you to practice it for the elements that it's supposed to create. My beloved teacher, Supreme Grand Master Dr. Moses Powell, would do a technique in its most simplistic form. And then, he would let everybody just go on the side and do it. And they would just do it like it didn't mean nothing, just moving their hands like that. And then he would call one of us up and we would go to attack him and pop, and we'd be on the floor. And it's like, first of all, how did he get from here to there? He was just here. He always weighed over 200 pounds. This is a big man. I mean, they always said his hands was big as a catcher's mitt. You know, that's how huge his hands were. So when he moved and he hit you and he struck you, you felt it. And he never did what I call a rev strike, like haul off and hit you. His hand would be that close to you, and he'd knock you out. But now that the technique has happened to you, you're like, what just happened? Teach me that. When I've been teaching you that all along, I've been teaching you that when I taught you how to breathe, when I taught you how to move, when I taught you how to lower your center of gravity so you can get from point A to point B. I taught you that so you can move with the mover. So he would give us these little, lack of a better word, little quatrains. Like Notre Dame, he wrote his whole pieces in quatrains, little small sentences. And these things would stick with you, and then later on, you'd have this epiphany like, that's what he was saying. Oh, I understand it now. And I tend to think that that's a good teacher will always put these little time capsules in your mind when you're training for you to open it up years later and find out, wow, now I know the true meaning of that. But I tend to think everybody wants to know the answer right now. You teach me now, I want to know the answer right now. What is this good for? What is this good for? But it could be used for many things. You just got to understand that when if you say you're in battle, what does that mean? I'm at war with somebody. I'm in conflict with them. I mean, we could throw that word around the room, and everybody will give you the thesaurus version of what battle means. And guess what? Everybody's right in their description of what battle is. But what's the objective to battle? To win? Okay, call that an objective. Okay, now let's go to the next level. How? And what tools do you use? So the teacher would say, if I was in battle and I had to take two weapons with me, what would they be? Tell me what your two would be.
Short sword and a bow staff.
Okay. One metal and one stick, right? If you had a gun or a rifle, what would be the second weapon that you would take into battle with you?
You mean other than the gun? Or are you saying the type of
No,
gun?
let's just take it, from the gun aspect, because most people say if I had to go to battle, I'd take a gun and then maybe a something or something, something. Now, but you chose two not primitive weapons, but weapons that would not be considered to be superior to a gun. If I said a bow staff and a sword, and someone else said a gun, the gun would trump the the bow staff. But let's take it from just the gun. If you had to take a gun in the battle, what would be the other thing that you would take?
I didn't understand
So,
that.
so for the gun, trying to turn this thing off. So for the gun, I'm going to go with the 10 millimeter
Mm-hmm.
because a 10 millimeter handgun, so I can use it in short range, as opposed to a
Mm-hmm.
rifle. You don't have to worry about distance concerns. And
Before you tell me the second one, remember the whole objective in this battle is not just to win, but also to survive. Because if you don't survive, winning means nothing. And you know that from being in the military. So, what would be the second weapon?
so other than the 10 millimeter, my weapon is going to be my fighter's IQ.
Mm-hmm. Okay, your fighter's IQ. What would you say if I told you that my weapon would be an M16 and a slingshot?
I'll give you a good price on this one. I'll give you a good price on it. This actually came from Japanese maple tree in my backyard too.
Wow, that's right on time.
Yeah. I just got to get that rubber thing like, Professor Gatlin used to have.
Right. Mm.
Um, I would ask you why. Why the slingshot? M16, okay, no doubt, but why the slingshot?
Because out of all of the weapons that because be considered firearm, I'd rather have a rifle because of the distance I may have to have over the handgun. Because I want to have the option of being able to shoot close and far and rapid because of the M16. But since my mission is to survive, I'm going to run out of ammunition.
Hmm.
That's why I bought a slingshot. Because I'll use the shells to put my adversary's eyes out. I'll become a sniper then. So the
Oh,
shells from the gun now are still part of my survival. And I would put them in a slingshot and become the sniper now and wait my prior opportunity. And if I hit you in the eye with a shell from an M16, you're pretty much blinded.
absolutely.
Right. So it becomes chess, not checkers, because I'm thinking about what the outcome of the battle will be. You see, so I'm not thinking about just winning. I'm thinking about making sure that I survive through this with the limited amount of weapons that I have to be able to do the job. I don't know if that analogy made any kind of sense to you. Maybe somebody listening to go, this guy's crazy. What are you talking about? A slingshot. But again, you have to get down to the AIO of it to adapt, to improvise, to overcome. If you're not doing that in any and everything that you're doing in life and trying to look at yourself as moving forward, then I tend to think that you missed the whole point because you have to survive before you can win. You have to. So when Dr. Powell said that his art was about simplicity and survival, that's what he was saying. You should always be thinking survival. You can win anytime. All right. But again, once that mindset gets into you, now when I'm doing my technique or whatever, and I put your eye out, well, when I'm doing my technique and I hyperextend your arm, break your arm, then lock your fingers and put you down, and then crush your spine. Whoa, that's overkill. No, it's not. It's me exercising my options and how fast I can do them in the flow of practice. If I don't practice the flow won't be there when I need it. So, I remember going to tournaments for self-defense, and in the self-defense, they would say you have to do 5 self-defense techniques. But I was taught that when I could put an opponent down, I could take him back up and move him around and then take him back up and do whatever. And then, oh, that's 3 techniques. I'm saying, no, it's not. I took him down once and I was just exercising my options. So you, you have to understand that the outcome of what you want has to be practiced in the conceptual stages long before you begin to flow.
You know,
So I
when
don't Mhm.
You said something, you know, that is so profound yet simple, because I'm talking about how do I regain the flow. So one of your nuggets of advice just now, you said to practice the flow. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's kind of reinforcing like my own thinking when I'm doing this drill today, boom, boom, boom. It's really not about the technique. I'm practicing the flow. I'm actually consciously striving to reach for that flow, that frequency where I used to be at, you know. So that's beautiful. So practicing the flow. Anything else you would add to that?
I would just say that this goes to put that into now a philosophy that you can use across the board. Like I believe you had asked me a question. We talk all the time, right? And
1,000
I thought of
conversations.
yeah, I was a little perplexed when you asked me. You said, how do you continue to
Yeah,
uh,
I'm gonna ask you that next.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, ask it so I guess everyone
Okay.
can hear how, because
So
it kind of perplexed me.
so this is the way we ended our last conversation. So I'm asking him, um, Supreme Grandmaster Moses Powell died in 2005. So you've been without a formal instructor for over 20 years now. But yet I've observed that you continue to grow and evolve. And actually, I think the word for you is expand. You've expanded, as a martial artist. So how are you able to do that without an instructor?
Mm, mm. And I think that the answer in that is in the original instructor. The instructor plants this seed inside of you to never ever rely on me because I won't be here all the time. But, no instructor wants to say that to his student or whatever. No parent wants to say, "Now I want you to learn how to take care of yourself and grow into learning because I won't be here with you all the time." We know that. We know about our mortality, but to plant that is to know that it will be there afterwards. I think the way that I look at it, like I don't look at my training as if it's goal orientated. I look at it as if it's mission orientated. Because when you even think about the word goal, you try to reach a goal. If I'm white belt, I want to reach the goal of green
This
belt,
one.
reach the goal of purple belt. If I continue to take my life patterns on the goal thing, then I'm always striving to
Second, I'm
reach
here.
something. But then when I get there, what do I do with it? And so that kind of is like the thing that motivates me. I think my training is being mission orientated because missions are designed to be accomplished. When you say I'm on a mission to accomplish something. And then when I accomplish it, it now opens up a whole nother realm for me to go further from that accomplishment. So I leave nothing undone. In my karate, I tend to think that I was mission orientated in that. Um, I was a weapons champion in the 80s. I wasn't the champion, but I held my own. And one of the attributes of my Kabuto training was I spun the bow. I didn't just do regular Okinawan style bow. And I thought, as I looked around, I was really one of the few people that was doing that at the time. So I'm not trying to call myself an innovator or anything. I mean, I love what I'm seeing out there now because to me it represents control. These guys can control this weapon. They're not even looking and they're spinning it around. I mean, that's what I see. A lot of my counterparts don't like it at all because they can't see the bunkai in it and nobody would do that in battle. And, they got all kinds of comments like that. But I'm saying, like, look at this kid's control. He knows where that weapon is at all times. If we say that the mission was a weapon is an extension of the body, then that kid has that concept. Look at that. He's controlling that weapon. So I'm not looking at it like, does it work in battle like that? I'm looking at it like it has a purpose of teaching control. Now, my spinning was a little bit different because I was disarming, striking, controlling, pulling the weapon out of his hand, and then striking him. So my rotations was that was happening in one stroke. So I was blocking, disarming with this end, coming down, striking, and coming back and doing it again. If I was to do that hard on somebody, it definitely would be devastating. But I was able to break down my bunkai. But my point in saying that was that I never was trying to reach a goal with my kabuto. So when I extended other weapons to my repertoire, it was not really a thing of me thinking that I'm finished with that. I'm good with a bow. I'm good with a tonfa. It was always mission oriented. And the mission was to never think that the book is closed. Again, a quote from my teacher: the book begins at the end. Think about that. Whenever you read something and the knowledge is in your head now, what do you do with that information? You turn it into knowledge. And that knowledge turns into wisdom. That wisdom into understanding. And so this is a circle that keeps going around. So when you seek, the only thing you can do, what's the expression? When you seek, you should find. Right. So when you find something, what is it you found? You found information. And then from the information, you go to knowledge. See, so if you understand what you're doing, you always know that there's another plateau and that you're always on a mission, not
The thing is, I'm
goal-oriented.
asking you, how are you reaching these next plateaus? And I'm gonna, when I think of you, I think of something that Anthony Muhammad said. He said that Doc once told him that Professor V is my instructor, but God is my teacher.
Yes, sir.
So there was a lot of divine guidance, a lot of
Yes, sir.
being receptive to receive revelations, and a lot of creativity. And creativity itself is a divine attribute. So
You hit it right on the head right there. That's the answer. To being receptive to the divine, to the message, to that which is being given to you and spoken to you every day. Most people are not receptive. And so to be submissive to the creator is to be accepting to what the creator has to offer you, making you understand that you are creation. You are creation. That's why you're able to create. The mere fact that you can propagate and you can make another being simply tells you whole creation inside of you. So on the mental level, what are you receiving? What are you developing? Man, you have it in your seed. You're able to share that seed with any female on this planet and produce something. But what are you doing mentally? What are you doing spiritually? How are you being receptive to the information? So that, yeah, I count my blessings with that. And I live by that same philosophy my teacher lives by. So that's why I say it kind of perplexed me. I'm like, well, how do I answer this? Because it's like, am I saying that I'm more receptive than you? No, I'm not. But I have accepted, I've submitted to that, which I think is greater than me.
okay, I understand what you're saying on a metaphysical level, but I want to see if we can kind of bring it down to the earth plane existence, which we might not be able to, because I mean, since the day when I met you, I've known you to be a hyper creative person. You had the shirts, send the war, do right, send the warrior. You had the small hand towels with the thing, and like nobody was doing that, and that was great. You know, those type of things were great. You went from Sanukis, Kuroshi Do, Kuroshi Kai Khan. Now you were just telling me recently. Now you have something called TNT. So could you talk about that? And again, tie it into like where is this learning coming from? Is it by studying the success and struggles your students are having? Is it from reading books on the outside? You know what?
Man, you're greater than you think you are, man. I thank you for listing my accomplishments in those martial arts systems and my presence in them and part of being part of those creations of them. But yeah, all of that and then some, because basically what you're doing is you're moving with time. You know, the human being that you are at 10 is not the same person you are as 20. Surely not the same person you are as 30. But you are the same person. It's the same body. But even though you're growing, you're the same body, but your outlook on life is different those 3 decades. You're not thinking like a 10-year-old right now, and you're not thinking like a 20-year-old, right? And remember, when you was like 20, you probably was thinking that you was the co-writer to creation, to the whole planet. you had all big ideas and everything should follow your lead. Later on, you humbled yourself to the fact that you don't know everything. So you let things evolve around you. So, when I did back in the day, I did a show called Fighting Rhythm Beats. I did that for 10 years. And I
Right.
felt that that was a way of expressing martial art culture to the novice. Because at the time, I remember a young lady walking up to me after one of my shows there, and she said, "Wow, I didn't even know it was such a thing as a black man as a martial artist master." And I'm like, "Wow, what's going on
Mm.
with that?" But she was very sincere. She didn't say that to be offensive to me, but she really did not know. So there's a whole lot of people who don't know things about us and the art and how we have developed here as well, because martial art doesn't get the media coverage that it maybe should. It didn't really get any kind of coverage until the team started taking over. The Budweiser team, the hair sponsor teams. I know you're familiar with that area.
Yeah, JPM, yeah.
Yeah, so martial artists were free agents then to get on these teams. And so you found a lot of people that wasn't from the same school or even style, but now they're teaming together because now it's a business venture to be able to have one team against another. And teams still exist to this day. But again, it was a way to popularize letting the public see martial arts. But back to what you were saying, that is that I think it takes all of those things to be able to be attuned to what's going on at the time and to be creative inside the creation. It takes a minute sometime to realize that you are moving through time like that, because at this present moment in my life, I'm in my 70s, and I don't think of myself as a 60s martial artist. That's when I started. So and I think if I stayed in that mindset then, um, perhaps I'd been a good martial art, but maybe not the best teacher. And I know that a lot of people can perform martial arts really well, but can they teach? My teacher used to have a quote like that
Right.
um, that that was for fighting. He says, "Yeah, that's nice. People can bend spears in their throat or whatever, but can they fight?" You see, so one thing doesn't equate to the other, and a black belt doesn't equate to be a teacher, and so on. So we just got to understand that.
You know, what you said about not being the same person at 10 is 20, and even really not the same person at 20 and 30. I'm gonna tell you how I can relate to that. So I was a quiet, shy introvert until I was about, 23, 24,
Mm,
25. And what happened is when I went into the military, because I was already a college graduate, I was put in a leadership position. So every day I was forced to come out of my shell, forced to come out of my shell, come out of my shell. And then one day I just stayed out of my shell. And I was asking my ex-wife, about 10 years ago, does she see me as an introvert or an extrovert? And she's like, what? The way you always going up talking to strangers in the store, this, that, getting this person laughing and don't even know you. But she's like, yeah, you're definitely an extrovert. And that was so fascinating to get a glimpse of me through her eyes,
right.
because she never knew the introvert part of me. But if we are the same person at 20 as at 30, then there's no growth. And I remember Sensei Jadi saying, if there's no growth, then the thing is said to be stagnant, and that is basically a state of death.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to be stagnant is death. That's the definition of death: stagnation. So you don't want to have this in between thing. So if you notice stagnation is death, don't become stagnant, right? Because you turn into something else that is taking over you. You're not in possession of the development of things now. It's taking over you. Just like you leave a piece of bread too long, mold takes over the bread, right? So it's oxidation takes over rusting iron. You can't be stagnant, right? Because all things stagnant will turn into death. So as we said, we want to keep moving through life, and age is a way to make us evolve in our thought process and the way we do things, the way we think. And when I went into the military, um, that was really a moment when I really think I began to think a little bit differently, like it may not be more after this, because I was around friends who would talk like that. Like we would never see the world again. That's what we call back home. And so, looking at pictures, playing old songs or whatever, we were just trying to recycle on that which we were left for because the world wasn't there no more for us to look at the next thing. And so when we would ask about things that were going on in the world and people would write back to us and tell us, we were like, they was on another planet because we like, they doing what? What kind of music they dancing to now? What? Because I remember when I was in the military and first time I heard Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. When I went in there, that wasn't the music genre at the time. And for anybody that knows that album, you know that he actually turned the whole music genre around with that type of music. Even Motown did not think that that's what everybody wanted to hear. But that melodic way of sending a message, and it wasn't about dancing, but it was about really speaking to something was going on inside you, became very popular because people were becoming more conscious than different things. So as we go through life, we have to understand that those things are constantly changing in us and they will continue to change. Maybe not even on a decade level, on a year to year level. And so we have to plant inside of those students that we have and get them to understand that there's going to be a evolution. Evolution must happen. And then when that happens, you need to be in tune with that. Right now, they wear silks. When I grew up, if you wore the wrong color gi, matter of fact, when I grew up, there was no such thing as nobody in a black gi. I didn't see a black gi until I was at least 15 years in the martial art. No one wore black. And you would definitely not come to a tournament with a black gi on. Everybody would ostracize you. There's a good friend of mine and yours, Master Tommy Chen. I kind of grew up with him in the weapons circuit or whatever. Excellent martial artist and still is to this day. I remember him being a Chinese practitioner as well, and also karate. And he would change. He would change from the gi to Chinese silks to go do Chinese kata, and then come back. And people were devastated by that. How dare you practice two styles at one time? And got the nerve to be good at it. But I was just trying to say that was virtual blasphemy at the time. So now, if you see a gi at a tournament with a school's name on it or something like that, that's passe. So, all genres will go through these changes or whatever and represent themselves a certain way. Jotty Tension, uh, Mafia Holloway and Pedro and the like, some of the greats, Billy Beeson. These guys, Asatita, all of these guys became very, very good at adapting to the new thing. And then they were able to cross genres as well. Every one of them that I just mentioned were champions for more than 2 decades. How do you do that when things are constantly changing around you? So there is some power in being consistent in your own truth and knowing that understanding that things are going to change around you, but can you adapt to that, to improvise to what's going on, to still be victorious? And those fighters that you and I both know, that they have found a way to do that. So kudos to them. But can they students duplicate that? And I think that's important. I talk to Jotty about that all the time. That you really need to have the ability to be able to transcend that thing. And he does it because when I watch him talk to his students, I see what he's giving them principle wise. Not, oh, I need you to do a double hook round or whatever a little bit better, and that's good. I need you to understand how to deliver it from angles. And angles are the thing that makes the technique work, not the technique. Right there, when I hear a teacher teach like that, I know that he's giving them principles that last a lot longer than just the actual technique itself.
Right. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up right here, I think.
Man, let me just say this. I appreciate you, man. Continue to be the Negrito that you are, and that we want to know that note your recognitions as well. On Point Magazine was definitely before its time. It still has a place right now. It spoke to the everyday tournament fighter that was out there that virtually did not have a voice. You know, they were managed by people. They were just really just people who were put up to do something, but we never really heard how they spoke to each other. And you being down on the ground there with them, you put it into a language that they were speaking, and they were speaking back at you too. So I give you big kudos for that. I really appreciate that. And the things that you're still doing right now and continuing your own training, and by training with Asatita's son, and all your development. You've been an aid to me as well. You've never been a person that I could not call on for your opinion, and also to help me sort of, as we do, as you say, have these conversations that always leads me on another level of understanding. So I thank you again, brother, and you continue to do what you do.
Thank you.
Boss.
And for the
Yes, sir.
audience, I just want you to know this is typical for us. These are the type of conversations that we have, all right? Just decided to share it with you. So
Yes, sir.
thank you. Thanks for coming out.